Hey guys, welcome back to the channel for another episode of The Broken Life. We are back here again today with our 99 Jeep Wrangler 4-liter 5-speed, lovingly known as the Jeep. If you're just joining us now, there's a playlist for this thing, which I will link right up there for you and down in the description. Today our mission, whether or not we choose to accept it, is to continue in our quest to replace all the fluids in this thing. And today's victim is going to be the transmission, which I'm sure you can just barely see it, but it's that guy right there. And this job kind of sucks because it is blocked in by this whole cross-member skid plate thing. So when you go to empty all the oil, it all just drops in the skid plate and makes a huge mess. So I'm glad you're here today to join me in the suffering there. I'm going to try and see if I can maybe invent a method to make this less of a disaster, but I got low hopes. So here we are laying under the driver's side, and the drain plug for the thing is going to be right there. I believe it is 15/16, and you will be well advised to have a wrench to get it out because the slave cylinder line is right there, right in our way. And the first step of draining fluid out of anything that works on drain and fill plugs is to make sure you can get the fill plug out first, because usually bad gross fluid is still better than no fluid. Plus this is going to play into our hand here in a minute with how I'm going to try to make less of a mess. So yes, that is 15/16, and as soon as I cracked it loose, oil started pouring out of there. When I say oil, I mean 10W30. Probably not a good idea. Probably also not a good idea to leave it in there for like 70,000 miles, which I've done. More on all that later. This actually leads me to believe I can make somewhat less of a mess doing this, because what we're planning to do is use the same suction gun we used in the previous part for power steering and suck oil out of it as much as we can before we open up the drain plug. If we're lucky, we might be able to get pretty much all of it. So the less that's in it, the less chance we have to make a mess. So that would be good. And a lot of our success here, or potential success here, is going to depend on how much of this hose we can get shoved down in the transmission. As soon as I pull that plug, it's going to start leaking again. So I'm going to have to try and get on the trigger and feed it in at the same time while I can't really see anything. It's going to be fun. I'm trying to keep the hose kind of sort of clean because, you know, we're shoving it inside the transmission. At least that's the goal. This plug does have a washer on it, but it's off right now because it ran away. Actually, you guys are just going to have to see from a different angle if you can see it all, because I got to get in here. This is just going to have to be the take my word for it portion of the episode. Okay, here comes a river of oil again. I've actually got some of the hose in there, which is cool. Oh, and we're getting some oil. I'm not actually positive how much this thing holds, but based on our results with the power steering fluid, I'd say that's probably over half a quart right there. So that is good news. That's half a quart that isn't going to spill everywhere, I hope. And what's coming out of it looks terrible and smells worse. Oh, this is engine oil, but keep in mind it was in a transmission, so there's no combustion, and the stuff's pretty freaking dark. Yeah, that's bad. Not good at all. But it's on the way out now, which is good. Let's do that until we can't do it anymore, and I will catch up with you and let you know how well it works. So that is the fruit of our second attempt, and that's pretty much all I can get out of it. And I would say that is over half a quart. And our mess level is practically zero. If this thing had been on level ground so it didn't dump oil as soon as I pulled the fill cap out, this would be pretty much fine. You know, cleaned up everything with one paper towel and no more drippies. Let's take a look at the condition of what we got out. I'm sure it'll be a horror show. See if we can shine a little light through it on the way out of the pan this time. I don't think that helps you guys much, but it helps me. Just looks like gross, dark, burned oil, which is bad because there's nothing to burn inside a transmission except itself. You know, some of that looked kind of gross. I don't think there's any water, but there's probably a whole lot of synchro and maybe some bearing. Okay, so just more coffee-looking oil. On to step 2, which is actually removing the drain plug and doing this the normal way. So now we're over here at the potty spot, and you can see the problem is if we just busted that guy on out of there, this skid plate is right here, and it just makes a big vat for all this crap to go down into, and you can't freaking drain it without making a huge mess. What they should have done is just cut a window in this thing from the factory so this wouldn't be a problem, but that's not what they did. It's also not going to be what we're going to do. What we're going to do is take this 2.5 gallon water jug right here and try and cut a bedpan for the thing and see if we can get the stuff coming out of the pee hole into the drain pan and not this pan. I'm positive I'm not the first guy to think of this plan, But this jug is so big, and we've already pumped out so much fluid that even if this all fails, and this just captures what's left, that would still work out. So I'm going to get this thing cut up with a razor knife and hopefully not cut my arm open, and we'll see how it goes. So scratch the whole bedpan idea. There's just no room to get it under there. We've now got just a trough, and I'm going to give this about a 10% chance of working because I'm going to have to hold it pretty much as you see me right now to get it to do anything. And if that oil shoots out of there any distance at all other than just a dribble, we're just hosed. I've got the drain plug cracked loose with a wrench, and it didn't immediately start dripping, so we may have a prayer at this sort of working. Also about a 90% chance of me taking oil all the way to the armpit. Okay, she's in a hurry. I am surprised by that. But I don't think we're making a mess. Wow, there's a lot more left than I thought there was. Holy crap, there's a ton more left than I thought there was. Well, the good news is, I think we're doing okay other than what I spilled by being an idiot. From the amount that came out, I'm going to say trying to suck it out from the top was a waste of time. However, water jug funnel. This is going well. Suppose I can set this up such that I can just like walk away for a while. Kind of. Just let her continue to drain. Okay, she's down to just a drip now. I think my funnel will catch most of it. I'm just going to leave it that way for 10 or 15 minutes, something like that. Before I forget to mention it, I did put the fill plug back in the transmission, just finger tight, before we drained it, with the hope that it would also slow the flow rate down on the way out, and I'm pretty sure it did. I don't know if you could see it, but it was bloop, bloop, bloop on its way out instead of just waterfall of death. So if nothing else, maybe walk away with that tip from the video is crack the fill plug loose to make sure it will. Leave it in there, then go get your drain. While it's continuing to drip, let's take a look at this guy, which is just full of nothing but bad news. This is the drain plug, and it's magnetic. And this is like a boatload of steel on the end of it. Yeah, that's bad. This transmission's toast, which I kind of already suspected. But yeah, that was, I don't know, a couple teaspoons of, metal-ridden grease oil there. That's all not good. What is going on with this thing? I intended to make a video showing you the symptoms before we did this, but I don't think it's going to matter. It's probably going to still do it afterward too. Is it reverse is basically torched. Getting it in reverse is hard. When you do, you can actually hear something go clunk, 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 clunk inside it. And if you put it in reverse and put your foot on the clutch and let it roll forward, you can still hear it going tuk, 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 tuk. So something's jacked. I was kind of hoping to not find this metal disaster inside, but, pretty much knew it was on the way. And I am going to take the blame for that defect in the transmission for two reasons. One, the last time I serviced this thing back in probably 2005, 2006, when I first bought it, is the service manuals for these things. People on the internet were saying we're calling out the wrong fluid. Well, listening to people on the internet, me included, so grain of salt, is not always a good idea. And the hot thing to do at that time was to change out whatever Jeep put in it, and whatever the owner's manual said, blah, 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 with 10W30 motor oil. And it would shift a lot better and everything else. So that's what I did, and it actually did shift a lot better for a while. But something that wasn't brought to my attention until much later is that motor oil isn't rated for kind of shear of gear sets in transmissions nonstop. In manual transmissions, it's just gear on gear. So it's just shearing that oil over and over and over and over. And that's not really what goes on in an engine. Plus, I left it in there way too long. It's been in there for 70 or 80,000 miles at this point. Because it's a real pain in the ass to change, as you have seen. I'm going to remedy at least one of those problems in the future. I think I'm going to make up some custom funnels and maybe even have those available for sale. We'll have to see how it goes. But the long-term fix is this thing's going to need new transmission one way or another. And with the mileage that's on it and how hard I've driven it, the clutch is also starting to go out. So this truly is just a bandage here. I knew this fluid was older than hell. We should probably get it out of there, just to save what we do have for a little while to come. So I will take all the blame for my transmission problems here by using the wrong oil. Speaking of, we're probably going to double down on that and use the wrong oil again. So I'm going to put ATF in it. What these things actually call for is, I think, GL3 gear oil or something like that. And what most guys do is put Redline manual transmission lubricant in it, so Redline MTL. I actually bought Redline MTL to put in it, but then I noticed, hey, this transmission's garbage, so I don't really want to put $80 of oil in it. So what I'm going to do instead is fill it with ATF, maybe hope on a prayer it actually seems to come around, maybe seems to at least shift better, And if it does, we're just going to use that ATF as a flush, dump it back out again in the near future, and then maybe we'll put Redline in it. If it doesn't make any difference at all, we'll probably just leave that ATF in there until I can afford to buy a transmission. Anyway, our drain plug is clean. In a few moments, I'm betting our little funnel drip droppy will be done. And I'm wondering how much brass is going to be in the bottom of that thing. This had literally as much steel on it as it could possibly hold. That's probably one of the reasons why the oil in the thing was so dark. It's just full of metal. So nothing good. Should also mention that both the drain and the fill have aluminum washers on them that you would probably be wise to replace, and I would have if I had really thought about it and known they were there. I do have some copper ones, but the copper ones I have are seemingly very, very hard, and to get them to seal, I have to really crank on stuff. And I really don't want to split the transmission case and give myself a leak I can't fix. So I'm going to reuse these, and if they leak, then we'll just dump the fluid again, replace the washers, and move on with life. So I've given this thing quite a while now to do its dribblings. It looks like it has. Let's see if I can just pluck this whole guy out. See if I can drain her slow and see if maybe we have a boatload of brass. No, a boatload of dirt though, and presumably metal. Nothing great. Surprisingly still dripping, but ain't nobody got time for that. We're going to send it. Just got to put the drain plug back in, and then we can fill it back up. So I just did something I should have done before we started this and looked up the fluid capacity on the thing. And it's almost a gallon. It's like 3.3 quarts. So up to you whether or not sucking that 1 quart out of it from the top was worth it. It was worth a shot. If we didn't try it, we wouldn't know. But now it's come time to fill it. And I am going to use this thing, which is meant for pressure bleeding brakes. So you put a thing on your brake master cylinder and pump this guy up and force fluid through it. Played with this thing a little bit earlier today. This is the first time I'm going to use it. Immediately regretted not buying one of these that's powered by compressed air, but those are also a lot more money. So we'll give it a shot. Also customized it with a ball valve and a hose, so we can stick our hose up in the transmission, turn the ball valve on, and start spraying. This thing doesn't like blow out like you would expect. The orifice tube inside this thing is really tiny, so it's just kind of a trickle, which I think will work out nicely for us. In regard to the fluid we're going to use some dirt cheap ATF that I've had laying around for over 20 years because this transmission's smoked anyway. So let's get our guy filled up, pumped up, and we'll get under there and fill it up. So I've got the thing pumped up, and it looks like Dracula's buffet table here. Got about 30 pounds in it, which I imagine as soon as I open the ball valve, it's going to drop to like nothing, and I'll be pumping that handle forever. Still think this is going to be better than one of those syringe deals. I used to have one of those. The one I had held about a half a quart. This thing took 2 full quarts in one shot, so I'd rather pump that thing up a whole bunch of times than screw with one of those syringes. At least so I think. We'll try and see. And here we are with another segment of There's absolutely no hope my viewers can see any of this anyway, so let's just give them a show that isn't a show. I'm noticing this thing loses pressure like almost immediately. I don't know if it's the cap or the gauge or what, but alright, I've got the hose stuffed in. Let's pray we don't make a gigantic mess. Let's find out. Nothing's going terribly wrong yet. I guess I'll just keep pumping and hope it does. Thing's doing a reasonable job though. It's probably hard for you to see it, but it's down to right about here right now. Probably taking on 3/4 of a quart or so. And I've not spilled a drop yet, which is cool. Totally regretting not buying an air-powered one. I think you guys get the idea how this is going to go. And it's just going to go the way it's going to go for a while. I'll come back with an update when I have one. Well, we got her full, and that all went surprisingly well. Our cardboard here was fairly clean before I started, but that's really not too bad for this job. The only place where we got out of hand was over there by that jack stand when I had the funnel not dumping in the drain pan. Otherwise, this is far and away the cleanest that I've ever seen one of these turn out, short of dropping the skid pan. And you can see there's lots of good reasons here why we're not going to do that today. That worked out just fine. I think I am going to make a custom funnel, so this isn't a big deal in the future. So, in the future, I'm not as prone to not do this as often. This thing actually ended up working out pretty nicely for me. It is kind of slow. It took about 10 minutes to move, 3.5 quarts, whatever. And there is some waste in, this nearly 6 feet of hose I put on the thing. But one thing that I didn't count on that is kind of nice is I don't actually have to have this thing under the car with me. I'll be doing differentials with it pretty soon, and diffs take like 2 quarts to the diffs on this thing do anyway. So I can just put 2 quarts of fluid in this thing, stuff my hose in the diff fill hole, probably just leave this guy in the cart, pump it up to 30 psi, and then just walk away from it. Basically, as long as there's more than atmospheric pressure in this thing, which there always is, It'll dump its full amount of oil out. It just takes a little while. Not a product endorsement or review by any means, because I'm just starting to get to know this thing, but for a guy at home, I like it. Definitely would not recommend it for this job for a professional. So did changing the transmission oil in this thing magically rebuild the transmission? No! In fact, I think it might actually shift worse now, but to be honest, I didn't drive this thing for about 2 years, so I honestly can't remember. I put about 200 miles on it since the beginning of the video, so I've kind of reacclimated myself to it, and let's go on a quick ride and I'll show you what it was actually doing before and is still doing after. Hopefully, I can actually demonstrate this without it being a big pain. So I'm gonna shut the Jeep off. Now I've got the transmission in reverse, and I'm gonna go to ambient sound, so I'm not gonna be using a mic. My foot is on the clutch with the transmission in reverse. You should be able to hear it start making a horrible clunky clunk noise. Which, interestingly, it doesn't really seem to be doing. Of course it isn't. Okay, well, let's see if it'll do our next problem. Requires me to start it back up. So the next problem is that no matter how many times I pump the clutch and how long I wait and how slow I do it, or if I go from first to reverse or third to reverse or whatever, it grinds going into reverse no matter what. I'm going to guess that for no good reason, today is the one time in the last 3 years that it's not going to. But we'll try it and see. So I'm just going to drive down the street and turn around and come back and go to back in the driveway like usual and see if it does it. Actually, I drove it around the block a couple times. I'm pulling up to the homestead. Ignore this, by the way. Neutral, reverse. Grindy grind. Yeah, more grindy grind. There's fourth, grind in reverse. My foot's on the clutch, by the way. Doesn't want to go into first right now either. Second, reverse, grindy grind. Third, there's first, grindy grind. What's weird is if I go really fast and then come to a stop suddenly, it seems to want to go into reverse better. Anyway, we're just going to bang it in, like so, up the driveway. Another thing is, in reverse, it always has sounded kind of like a box of rocks. Usually reverse are like straight cut gears in most transmissions or most manuals, so it tends to. But this has gotten worse over the years, so let's get going in reverse at a decent speed. I think you probably hear that. Wow. Anyway, I'll give it one last chance to make the noise idling forward with the engine off. And we'll see if it'll do it. External mic. It's doing it, but not as bad as usual. So how bad is it really? Well, kind of hard to say, but I know the thing isn't right. I'll say it again that I've been none too nice to the transmission in this thing. Ran it on the wrong fluid, for way too long. It's been drag raced, it's been beaten on, all sorts of fun things. So I don't blame it, but I'm gonna have to do something about it in the future. But for now, we're gonna leave the future in the future and we're gonna keep rolling with other things. So as always, guys, appreciate you stopping in. I'll catch you on the next one. I'm Max, that's Saddington Bear, and we make videos like this all the time. Here are a couple links to some other videos we've made, and we really appreciate you guys stopping in.